Catherine, welcome to People in Legal.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
I Before this call, I've actually enjoyed immensely talking about your move and what you've been doing and the Christmas holidays and break and what's going on in the world and things. It's so great to have a bit of a friendly chat beforehand. It's been great.
Yeah, definitely. It's sometimes these things you can come in a little bit, okay, what's the agenda? How do we go? So no, it's been lovely to catch up.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I guess the starting point of these is always around, I guess, the people. Our subscribers and listeners would love to find out about your career, about you, and what you do, and how you do it, etc.
Okay, yeah. At the age of 44, it's a little bit, I'll try and give the short version. But yeah, so I'm a legal technology consultant. So I
Mhm.
work with law firms, in-house legal teams, and more these days, alternative legal service providers. Um, to help them choose what technology is right for them based on their needs. But very much my niche, if you like, is all around contract technology. So I
Hmm.
started off as a real estate lawyer actually,
Wow.
and then um, when the recession hit, I was asked to go on a short secondment within my team to automate our documents. And I loved it. My inner geek came fully out of the closet, and I was like, oh, there's something to this automation stuff. And, we're talking 15, 16, 17 years ago now. Um,
Wow.
so it was kind of that first wave, if you like, before we had hashtag legal tech. So I was
Mm.
like, there's something to this. So I approached the firm and I said, look, rather than me going back and continuing to fee earn work for clients, could I do this firm wide, not just for the real estate team? So did that, built a team, went pretty well, started to get, quite a lot of recognition for it. The team won, the firm won quite a few awards at the time for the work that we were doing in automating our services. And then I was really lucky and fortunate that other law firms started to kind of tap me on the shoulder and say, want to come do what you've done there for us? And enough of them did that I thought there's a consultancy angle. And I thought best case scenario, few years and then I'll get a proper job again. And
Mm.
here I am 10 years later, still lucky enough to work with lots and lots of different organizations around the world.
It's interesting. I mean, you must see so many different kinds of documents that need to be automated, and you've got different opinions on things. And I mean, how do you do it?
Um, although although all the different so whenever I go into a law firm, very often there's one department that I'll be asked to go and speak to that'll go, well, Catherine, I understand that you can automate real estate, you can automate banking, but my area of law is super bespoke and super um and but when you start breaking it down, all legal documents and all legal transactions, you have instructions coming from the client or an agent or whoever sends the instructions through, and they need to be turned into some sort of document that um, will let the transaction happen. Um, so at some point, a lawyer is putting that information in. So it doesn't really matter how you could work in space law. You're still going to have to fill in information about the parties and everything else. And a lot of what we do is actually the boring, heavy lifting of preparing
Mm.
documents rather than any true bespoking. Um, so even though it's all different documents, you get to know the kind of commonality across any area of law. There's always a jurisdiction clause, there's always parties clauses, all these kind of things. And you can speed those up immensely.
It's actually interesting because you go into a practice and you see that they've not used automation before, and you're probably like, hitting a candy shop type scenario where you can actually automate these things. What kind of efficiencies have you been generating, I guess, where people are sort of starting from a base level?
Yeah. Um, so totally depends on the area of law as to how much time you're going to be able to save when you're preparing first drafts of documents. Something like a banking facility agreement, which is like a 200-page document. Um, the UK LMA one, for example, can take a quite a senior banking lawyer, maybe like up to 6 hours to prepare from the precedent. They have a precedent, but to go through and prepare it all. And that's then maybe reduced to about 45 minutes to an hour when you
Wow,
automate it.
that's
Um,
incredible.
but they maybe do two, three, four a month. Whereas real estate leases, maybe the traditional way take an hour, and you can reduce that to, anything between quarter of an hour and half an hour, but they maybe
Mm,
do 200 a month, so it's like,
mm,
um, and also it depends on how much you automate things. So some law firms I've worked with, they're corporate SPAs, they will want to automate the entire thing, every little detail. Others ask 10 questions to just do the heavy
mm,
lifting. Is it the acquisition of a single company or a group of companies? That's 400, 500 sets of square brackets and just changing the grammar throughout the whole SPA document. Um, so it depends on, yeah, how far they want to go as to how much time saved. There is also, we go into some of the work we do is we go into law firms where they've maybe rolled automation out themselves, but for some reason it's not being used, and you actually find it's that they've over automated it. And it takes the
oh,
lawyers longer because they put too many options and questions in. Um, when 90% of the time it's only this set of options, and it's actually like it takes them, it's frustrating, it takes them so long. We've all had those forms that have so many questions.
mm,
Like, why am I having to pick between 50 different possible titles of,
yep,
like I always
exactly.
choose a crazy one. I'm like, Lady Bamford of Malden or whatever. I'm like, why is that even relevant in this day? You don't need my title, it's like my name is Catherine. Like, yeah. So yeah, we also go in and sometimes we actually streamline the automation to make it more user friendly.
That's interesting. So people actually overly engineer things. So you've got probably, I mean, some people over engineer
Talking
things and
about
you
lawyers, of
simplify.
course.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Sorry.
but that's all right. You've got some lawyers that actually think, "Oh, you're going to juice this thing, where you get the most out of it," and they over-engineer it. Then at the end of the day, I mean, it costs them more time. So what you do is you'll go on there and you'll simplify things and bring it back to a level where, the 10% of things that can be done, sort of, I guess, bespoke, are done, and your 90% you're getting the efficiencies. That's actually really interesting. Yeah.
The thing that lawyers are particularly good at is thinking about the 1 in 100 chance of something happening and making sure that someone's protected of that happening. But that means when you say to them, what are the possible, um, you know, answers to what is the liability clause, they'll come up with 10, but there's three that are used 99% of the time. So it's looking at that. But what you can do after the event that a lot of people don't think about with document automation, but one of the benefits of it, as well as the obvious, kind of efficiency, standardization, reducing risk of error, that kind of thing. One of the other benefits is that you can save what your lawyers are actually clicking and putting in as the data. So you can continuously improve your base documents and your templates and your precedents by going,
Mhm.
well, okay, this question was, is your favorite color red, blue, green, or other? Well, 70% of the time they're saying other. Oh, we need to put another option in there. So let's add a clause, for yellow or
Ah,
whatever they're putting in. Or 100% of the time they're choosing green. Well, let's get rid of the question and just make
yeah.
sure that our starting position is always green. So yeah, there's a lot you can do actually with the data of what's already there. Some softwares make it easier to get at that data than others, I would say. So when you're choosing, think about whether it's going to be helpful. That can also be really, really interesting information in terms of helping your clients.
Mm.
Um, so one example, we automated the preparation of defenses to employment claims for a very large supermarket retailer. So anytime an employee raised a grievance, an employment grievance, um,
Mhm.
the information would be put in, and the questions would be something like, uh, is it for unfair dismissal, constructive dismissal, discrimination? And let's say they
Mhm.
tick discrimination, then you'd have the drop down. Well, what area of discrimination? Sex, age, race. Okay, sex discrimination. Where did this originate? Was it in one of your stores or one of your warehouses? Okay, a warehouse.
Mhm.
Which warehouse? Glasgow, Manchester, London, whatever. Glasgow.
Mm.
Okay. The law firm can then give that data back to the GC and say, or the HR team and say, did you know that 70% of your claims are coming from here for that? Do you need to give some training? Do you need to discipline someone? So
Wow.
you can start to recognize from what your lawyers are drafting um, patterns within for your client to feedback. So you can be more of that kind of advisory strategic.
And
help.
is that something that you do with the services you provide? Do you actually provide help with the analytics in terms of the data that's been pushed through those documents?
We help the law firms to think about their setup of what they want to offer their clients.
Ah, okay. Okay. Effectively, yeah, the products and services they're actually offering to GCs or their end clients. Yeah, that's really,
Yeah.
and are there some areas of law or practice areas that lend themselves better to document automation than others?
Yeah, definitely. Transactional work, where you're doing volume, so real estate being an obvious one. If you're acting for institutional lenders, pension funds, that kind of thing that have your supermarkets, your industrial estates, and you're doing lots and lots of leases every month. Um, Commercial, so supplier agreements, statements of works, employment contracts, banking loan agreements, and corporate SPAs, share allotment packs, that kind of thing. So all that kind of transactional work. However, I just posted actually on LinkedIn yesterday, I often get asked by litigators, can this be useful for us? And what can we do? And it really can, especially where you have a whole bunch of documents to get to court,
Mm,
and especially where you have got to get them prepared quickly. And quite often, so say it's an injunction, you're going for an emergency
mm,
injunction, quite often
mm,
you'll be preparing like 8 documents, but the information that goes into all 8, there'll be a lot of repeated information, even just about the parties, the case numbers, the
mm,
claim numbers. So
mm.
just sweeting those all together, answering one questionnaire or inputting the information, getting a first draft of all of those can save hours. So the one yesterday that I mentioned was it was a partner of a global law firm based in San Francisco. And he was able to draft a protective order. He worked for tech companies that uh, if someone tried to steal their source code, he would
Mm.
have to do protective orders very, very quickly. And he was able to get first drafts out, or prepare first drafts now. He said he timed himself and it was 6 minutes. And he said that must be about a
Oh,
90% time saving,
my goodness me. My
by
goodness me.
clicking those
That's
options.
that's
So,
amazing.
and to get that kind of feedback from a partner as well, rather than
Yeah.
like a junior, I'm like, okay, no, actually, this has impact. I was like, can you go and tell your colleagues, this will help. So
I mean, so you've got clients all over the world.
we do, yeah. I've been really lucky that it started off very much like I'm in the UK, so started off London based, but obviously London has your global law firm, so you do a little
Yeah.
bit of work for Latham's London, and then you'd get asked to work for one of the knowledge lawyers in New York, and then it
Yeah.
just it just moves around. And pre-COVID, I was very lucky. Pre-COVID and pre-children, I was very lucky that I used to get to travel and be asked to go and speak in places and stuff. So yeah, I got to meet some fabulous people traveling about. Nowadays, it's a lot less travel for me as I have a 2-year-old, so it doesn't afford too much travel at the moment.
That's it. It's actually interesting because I think we share I mean, I've, I mean, I guess you've got clients all over around the world and you've got clients you work with around the world. The same here. Most of our good business comes from Northern Hemisphere, which makes sense because that's what we do, and we've got to but it's all delivered remotely and things like that. So, but isn't it? I find that people are more willing and accepting to actually do things remotely and have that. It's there's more trust there than there ever was before. I think that was one of the things that came from COVID. People had to do business that kind of way, and therefore it's made it easy for people like us who have got clients around the world to provide that sort of the services and get new
100%.
clients.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also been much easier for me to attract really good talent,
Yeah.
because they don't have to be based in wherever I am based for us to meet in an office. So if I have a client that needs help with so one example at the moment, we have a client who was looking for a generative AI, one of the new legal generative AI tools, wanted to assess which one would be right for them for a pre-execution contract review.
Yep.
So big need for in-house at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, and I was able to bring in my brilliant colleague, Peter Duffy, who currently is living in Amsterdam. But when we worked together 2 years ago, he was in, I think, Portugal surfing
Wow.
somewhere. I don't know. So it's
Cool.
like I had Lauren that used to work for me, a real estate lawyer, when we were doing a lot of real estate automation from a we work in Bali. So yeah,
That's
I can
so
have
cool.
brilliant people and we can all work very freely and flexibly and give that 24-hour service as well because we're all
Yeah.
over the place.
I think that makes a big difference. I think the fact that if you can do that 24 that sort of 24/7 coverage. I mean, we actually currently we can do that because we've got people in different parts of the world that we do, and that's it. And meeting in a virtual office, I think, oh, sorry, meeting in a real office, that might happen once a year. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
actually, as I say, I really like the way that you can do that now. It gives more flexibility. Also, a better service link to your clients as well.
yeah. 100%. And I can do a lot more as well because, when you add in the traveling and the commuting, um,
Mm,
we are a small consultancy. So if
mm,
I have like two or three clients, that will take up my full week,
mm,
at any time. So we don't work for like 100 clients at once. It's small, like two, three clients at once on projects. Um, and if I was taking a full day out to fly or travel somewhere,
yeah,
that's time gone. So it makes us a lot more efficient as well. I do get lonely though. I'll be honest.
yeah. It is hard.
I love being around people. So I had like yesterday, I had a wonderful offer from someone, Alex McPherson. He runs Ignition Law, and
Mm,
we're going to meet up for a coffee soon to chat about some stuff. And he was like, "By the way, we have spare desks. We have an office that no one's because they're
yeah,
very flexible working as well." And he's like, "If
yeah,
you're ever in town." And you need a spare desk. I'm like, I'm going to take you up on that just because to be, sometimes I'll just take my laptop to a coffee shop.
yeah.
But just to have the buzz of people around you, I think is
I,
important.
I, I totally agree. I've found the same thing as well. I mean, if I'm actually going, if I'm going, and I was just in Bali recently myself, and
Oh, I remember you saying
interesting.
you were going to go. Fabulous.
Yeah, oh, that was an interesting trip. But I found myself, you sort of sit in your hotel room doing stuff. I thought to myself, like, I just want to get amongst it in a cafe where you've got buzz of people and you've got things going on. And yeah, I think that's where some of these shared offices or shared works,
Mm,
places like WeWorks and those kinds of things are actually really super
exactly.
useful. Yeah, no, it's very,
Yeah.
very good. So I've
Yeah.
got a question. So if I'm a law firm, when would I call you in? Who in a law firm would call you to come in and look at things? And I guess what are the trigger points? What things do I, if I'm a law firm, should should be flashing lights or trigger points for me to call you in?
Yeah. I guess it happens at all stages. So I have a meeting this afternoon, for example, with a law firm who've just put together a group of all different levels of people actually, but they're calling them the kind of like innovation pioneers. And it's just to give them an hour of what is document automation and what are the benefits. And they're having, I think, six of these with different topics going forward. So it might be when they're just someone on the board or someone has been tasked with, let's look into how we can improve the delivery of our legal services using technology. Do we need to modernize? Are the things we need to do? Or it can be um, a large firm who already has a very established legal innovation, legal engineering team, but perhaps they've reached a bit of a plateau with certain
Mm,
things. Things aren't
mm,
scaling. They're spending an awful lot on licenses for something, but it hasn't really taken off. It's not being implemented. Or they've got something that's 20, kind of 30 years old. People are leaving, that knowledge is leaving with them, the resource cost is high. Is there something better and more modern on the market to help them? A lot of what we get asked to do is really speeding up that kind of analyst time where there's so many products out there at the moment. It's so
mm.
difficult to keep up.
There are.
So what we spend a lot of our time doing is demos. We see
Mm,
products, we keep contemporaneous notes. So people can come to us, we take them through, your exact requirements. What are your requirements for different, because it's different for everyone as well. Um, and then give them like a top three and then
mm,
they'll look, they'll do pilots of those three tools, that kind of thing. Normal people that get in touch are heads of knowledge management, um, if they have like an innovation tech role. Um, Often we get a lot of lawyers and partners that have moved from one firm that
mm.
has tech and tools and resources that would move to another firm that don't, going, we
Ah,
need what we had there. Can you come in? So I'm
got
very
it.
lucky. I get a lot of our work comes from people we've worked with before that then move around.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. No, I think I can definitely see why a law firm would bring you in. I mean, also I guess where they're I mean where they're implementing some software as well. So I guess they're putting some software in, they've made a decision on something and they sort of need things to go on smoothly. There's all the change management, all the other sort of stuff to go as well.
Yeah, how do we
Yeah.
make a success of it? Where do we start? How do we prioritize? Because it might be with so something we get asked a lot with document automation type tools are is kind of your question earlier, what lends itself well to it. But often it might have come in because you've got a corporate partner that has previously been somewhere that does the SPA. So they're like, we must get it into our SPA, and they do that first. That takes up all the resource for the first 6 months or something. Um, it's when you're learning, it's maybe not best to go on something so big and so complex to start with. So it's
Mm,
kind of
mhm,
how do we start? Where do we go? A lot of what we're doing at the moment as well is helping people to take ownership back of their documents. So, like 20 years ago, you had Hot Docs, Contract Express, and Exari. They were your three tools that were out there. And no, regardless of how much they said in their marketing material, anyone can learn to do this, the lawyers can do it themselves. It to do anything, you did need to, there was a steeper learning curve. And you did need specialist resource either in-house or outsourced
mm,
to do your documents. You could do a little bit yourself, but a lot, and the lawyers didn't have time. Um, but that has led to then key person dependency in places. Those people leave. So nowadays, and then there was a wave about 5 to 10 years ago of like these new low code solutions coming through which looked great but didn't have the functionality of like your Contract
mm,
Express, your hot dogs.
mhm,
So they looked wonderful, but then they quickly got annoying because you couldn't do what you wanted to do, like a table for a share allotment pack or something.
mm,
But more recently, there have been tools come out that are more user friendly, more low code, but do have the same level of functionality for these
mhm,
documents. So we are now able to, if if you want to get a document automated in legal, you need the subject matter expert, whether that be a lawyer or a knowledge lawyer, to kind of mark it up and say, these are the questions to be asked and these are the options. That process can take quite a long time for them to think about. And they then give that to someone else to
mm,
automate that maybe doesn't understand the subject matter of
mm,
the contract. Um, and then it goes back and forth because they have to do iterations and everything else. If
mm,
you can train this subject matter expert to do it, and it's
mm,
not, and it takes just the same amount of time because it's not complex code,
mm,
that's better. And that's how you, in terms of getting scale, you can really start lots of little forest fires that get that scale. So you can give it, do the corporate one, you
brilliant.
can do the real estate one all at the same time rather than one
Yeah.
person having to do them all one after each other or two people. I had a law firm recently that have 15 legal engineers. And
Wow.
in the UK, they recently updated the banking laws, and these changes needed to go through all of the automated finance documents. Those
Mm.
banking lawyers were told it would be a 9 month wait to get those maintenance
Oh,
changes made by the legal engineering team. That's not acceptable going to work. And it didn't matter if they brought in two new engineers. They were asking for prices to outsource the automation because they were too busy on other projects. So that's where, in my mind, those knowledge lawyers, because they were text changes as well. They weren't coding changes. They were
oh,
text changes to the templates. But you can't, with something like Hot Docs or Contract Express, a lot of people are scared to allow people that haven't had the training to make the amendments in case they break the code.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's something we're doing a lot of at the moment is looking at how can we allow more citizen development and give ownership back to the knowledge lawyers and the departments of their own documents.
Yeah, I like that. Also gives people opportunity for a career advancement as well. I mean, those people that are knowledgeable, it actually gives them the ability to actually learn some tech and get down their belts as well and makes it even more valuable. So it makes their position even stronger and better. I mean, generative AI versus document automation. What are you hearing about that?
Yeah, so I do have clients saying to me, Catherine, is there any point in us even considering document automation or improving it or looking into it at the moment as generative AI is going to take over everything and we'll be able to draft everything using Gen AI? Um, my opinion's very much kind of changed. I'm learning with everyone and growing with everyone over
Yeah.
the last 2 years. So maybe if you asked me 2 years ago, I'd go, hell no. Use if then else logic.
Yeah.
Um, Document automation definitely is the right tool for the job when it comes to trust, why would you want to send a document out that could potentially be different every single time? Um, but then obviously as we've learned and we've worked now more with many more tools that have come out on the market, currently loving Leia is one of them, there's clients using Harvey, lots of others out there. Um, we're seeing use cases where it's not necessary to have that strict template. So the gold standard, I would say, is still if you have a firm template or a firm precedent, use if then else logic, which is automation and like a doc automation tool to prepare the first draft of that document. You get all the benefits from it, no risk, and also it's a lot cheaper compute power, if you like, than
Yep.
using generative AI. However, one example that we've seen recently is board minutes. So if you're
Mm,
doing a lot of corporate work, corporate like kind of administration simplification work, um, your client's going to send you some notes, or you're going to get an email, or someone's going to have been present at the meeting and taken some notes.
mm,
Put in a previous version of the board minutes, put in those notes. It doesn't have to be, it's not like a 200-page SPA where you're not going to be able to find what's changed. The user interface of these tools, some of them are very nice in terms of it will show you anywhere that it's changed and you can quickly
mm,
accept, reject, edit, or change.
mm,
So that is quicker than the setup of automating those board minutes and someone working through a questionnaire.
mm,
So that's definitely like one area. So I've tried to break it down into like what is legal drafting and what are we talking about? And when it comes to creation, um, you've got like transactional documents, which I still think gold standard, as I said, automate a firm precedent. If you don't have a firm precedent, use a third party, practical law from counsel, whoever
mm,
that may be.
mm,
And they have automated versions too. If you find a previous example, the ideal is that you take that previous example and you turn it into a precedent for your colleagues to
yep.
use.
Yep.
And then when people go truly bespoke, there's no previous examples, this has never been drafted before. Um, that's when you can use generative AI. It's hugely useful for drafting. I question how much in reality that ever happens, that you've never had anything remotely similar previously, so maybe in that 1 in 1 million instances, then yes,
Mm,
that would
mm,
get you a good starter for 10. What should be the main headings of clauses I would use for sending a zebra eating an avocado to the moon?
mm,
Okay, that might, help you on that. You've then got litigation documents. Generative AI can be excellent for things like witness statements. Now, obviously, it's got to be in their own words, but generally, what lawyers do is they interview their client, they interview their witnesses, they take the notes and the bullet points, and then they type those up.
mm,
And then they get them to agree and say, "Do you agree? This is what you've said, and this is what you agree with." So that kind of thing, turning those bullet points, those notes into the first draft, brilliant for that. Advisory great at improving language, making it more legible. Clients always complain too long, did not read. You know, take this advice that I'm giving my client, give them bullet points and a summary at the top. Generative AI is brilliant for that.
it
Um,
is.
so yeah, so there's lots of things where it's like if we think talking about drafting, there's they're complementary tools. There's places where Doc Auto is best, and there's places where Gen AI is best, and we're even starting to see more and more. So a lot of the more cutting edge work we're doing this year is working with people who are wanting to combine the two. So use the if then else logic as the engine that you never
Mm,
actually see. Um, but so that whole thing of you get the instructions from the client, the email, the whatever, and
mm,
then it's not generative AI, then it uses the if then else logic that
mm.
you've fed in to then produce it, but you don't go and see the doc auto questionnaire.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Huh. Wow, that's very clever.
I have fun at work. I'm having a lot of
No, you
fun at
would.
the
I mean,
moment. It's
do you actually do you work with firms until helping them use generative AI type solutions? That's something that you do as well?
Yeah, very much more through my colleague Peter Duffy. So he's, I would say, one of the world's experts when it comes to generative AI for legal. There's not a product he hasn't seen, piloted, played with himself. Um, and a lot of so clients that come to me. So Peter also has his own consultancy that I should shout out called Titans. So if purely what you're looking at is Jenny over legal, he's a great person to go to. Um, but when clients come to me and there's that kind of overlap, then that's when I would. Peter and I were lucky enough to sit next to each other when we both worked at Deloitte Legal, and
Oh wow. Yeah.
it was just one of those ones where it was his first experience working for legal. He'd come from other industries, building applications for like
Mm,
banking apps, sports gambling apps, insurance apps, political apps, that kind of thing. And it was his first foray into legal. Um, and for me, it was wonderful to sit next to someone with that background of actually properly building products
mm,
rather than someone like me who used to be a lawyer that moves into tech. So
mm,
I learned fabulous methods
mm.
of how to work from him, and I told him a little bit about the legal industry and the
That's
nuances of
cool.
that, and it made a cool team. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's like it's such a very very important and very like a niche but very important area, and there's so much breadth I guess you've got to cover from solutions as well. Is there anything you've seen out there in the marketplace solutions wise? You think to yourself? I mean, you mentioned some names a moment ago.
I was all right to
Um,
name drop. Like it's just stuff that
yeah,
I'm
is there
seeing and
anything
playing with at the moment.
is there anything that's really cool out there at the moment you're seeing in terms of products and things?
Really do like Leia. There seems to be a
Yeah.
lot coming from like kind of the Nordic countries.
Yeah.
So document automation wise, one of our favorites and getting real positive praise from clients. You can tell when you say to clients kind of like, how's that going? If they reply quickly and they're kind of like, really, really great, such a lovely team, da 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 da, you're like, oh, okay, that's good. And then other ones go, yes, and it's you can people always say nice things, but how they say it and how,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, is that, so we're getting massive positive praise about a tool, document automation tool called Document Drafter at the moment.
Hmm.
So that's the one like From Council, for example, have brought in to automate all of their kind of gold standard precedents. Um, and other law firms are looking at they're getting a lot of traction at the moment. Um, and mainly because they do allow a lot for that kind of citizen development. So it's low code, no code, um,
Mm,
and the subject matter experts just write the questionnaire in plain English,
mm, mm,
which is that's a big thing. In terms of the kind of generative AI tools, yeah, Leia gets a lot of praise for its functionality, but also for like beautiful user interface. So people are really liking it. Um, but I feel like I'm at the point at the moment where I'm seeing a new tool every week.
wow.
It's and like we always take a couple of demos a week, but as in a new tool that's impressive and doing something different. Yeah, it's I don't know how clients can even when they have day jobs that isn't solely focused on legal tech, how they can even think about keeping up. It's such an exciting time for me, who's been kind of in legal tech for 10 years. The last 2 years um have really ignited my passion for legal tech again because we're suddenly thinking about how to solve
Mm,
use cases, how to solve, particular things and tasks that lawyers do. Again, so we're designing again, if you like, thinking, well, if we
mm,
use that and that and that, and how does that work? And oh, that process hasn't worked that well. Could we reshape that?
mm.
So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun at the moment.
I mean, is that I guess that interest and that level of thing, yeah, I guess level of interest in the marketplace, what's it driven by? Is it driven by clients? Is it driven by the whole, that time we had COVID and people had to go and do more automation type things? I mean, what's driven this interest and I guess that level of work?
Yeah. I think 10, 15 years ago, it was very much like recession, the more for less argument,
Mm,
um, clients saying you need to do more of our work for less. Especially in the UK, at the time, people were worried about the threat of like the big four impacting and alternative legal service providers. Um, so definitely like around fixed fees, but I think now it's less about there is still a lot of like kind of innovation sort of theater, shall we say, and and people saying they're doing incredible stuff, and then when you scrape beneath the surface, it's maybe not quite so incredible. But I think nowadays it's just expected, both by clients and by lawyers, um, to be using the most relevant and up-to-date tools to do the work. It's still a lot about, it's when people say we still do the billable hour,
Mm.
um, it's actually really rare. So even unless it's like some form of litigation, you might not do fixed fees in terms of you said to your client, every time we do this sort of agreement for you, it'll be X price for the next year.
Mm.
But anytime they come to you to say, can you do this job for us? You give them a quote at the beginning. And if you suddenly change that at the end and go, we went massively over and you haven't had a conversation, they're not going to be happy. So you do have a fixed price. So a lot about working more efficiently using these tools is about kind of reducing write-off, improving profitability for the law firms. For in-house, it's about helping them um, take a lot of work, work off their desk,
Mm.
letting the business self-serve themselves a lot more, taking all those common inquiries away, letting them see what's in their contracts, in case they have an audit or something like that, which has
Mm.
happened, that often is a reason people come to us for kind of intelligent searchable repositories in-house. Um, so lots of different reasons, but I think the one that everyone thinks about is um is speed and efficiency. And I'm not sure that actually people really are looking that much at I used to use the analogy that no one ever questions the return on investment of accountants using Excel rather than using
Mhm.
an abacus. You
Mhm.
know, so
Yeah.
it's kind of like, or, sending an email rather than
Yeah.
sending a letter by carrier pigeon. So it's like if you have tools that will speed up um, a lawyer going through and striking out square brackets and changing grammar from the target has to the target group have. No one went to law school to do that, So it's like it's just kind of I think it's become expected. Long way of
Mm.
saying I think it's just now expected that people have it, and if you don't, you're falling behind.
Yeah, interesting. So a question unrelated to what you're doing, that sort of stuff, but more about you're much of a reader? Do you read many much in the way of books and things like that?
These days, not as much. So I have a 2-year-old that doesn't sleep. But
Mm.
podcasts, podcasts these days, or TED Talks, that kind of thing, a bit more than books. But I have a whole shelf over there of books that I used to read.
So any recommendations? Any recommendations for people that are actually, I guess, recommendations on in terms of podcasts or books you've read recently?
Yeah. So as I said, books recently, sadly no, unless people want to read The Snail and the Whale by Julia Donaldson, which is a great one and one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Um, Podcasts, well, obviously this one.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
yeah, well actually on podcasts I did do a post. Sounds blatant self-promotion here, but on LinkedIn, because people, especially like law students and people getting into legal engineering, the early stage of the career would ask me how to learn more about legal technology. So I actually just asked the community, what would you recommend? And I've
Mm,
curated and put together a whole list. So it's kind of featured, I think, on the profile of like, here's the best legal tech podcast, and there's about 20 on
fantastic.
there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And then also I've recently joined, which is really fun. A legal, what's it called? A pod club. So it's like
Okay.
a book club,
Yeah.
but you listen every week, you listen to, or it's monthly actually. Um, every month you listen to a podcast, and then you all get together to discuss it.
That's pretty
Um,
cool.
so it's for like legal operations professionals, lawyers, legal technologists, anyone working in this kind of sphere.
Mm.
But the podcasts aren't specific to legal tech or legal ops. So last month we discussed one where they interviewed Johnny Wilkinson,
Oh yeah.
the rugby player,
Yeah.
and it was all about
Ah,
obsession and perfection, and so. But then it
yeah.
was like, how does that apply to us, resonate to us? So that was a really, really good one. And the one before that was Darren Brown,
Oh, yep.
talking about
Yep.
happiness. you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's my turn actually next week. I'm the co-host next week. And I've chosen a TED talk all about the corporate ladder and
Oh yeah.
how winners take risks. And if you just follow the ladder, you're not really going to get as much success, right, potentially, as kind of jumping off cliffs. So yeah,
That
that's
sounds
it's
right.
called the
Yeah.
Exchange Pod Club,
Okay.
if anyone's interested.
Yeah, we'll put some links in the into the post and things like that. But it's awesome. So I guess for anybody who's even remotely interested in actually getting their practices automated, getting a document automation sorted, I mean, Catherine's a person you should definitely be talking to. Even a hint of even a hint of like just wondering what it might look like to automate your documents, or where you've got projects that are kind of stalling, or if you want to see what the best things in the market are. I mean, definitely be talking to you. But Catherine, look, thank you so much for your time today. Absolute pleasure chatting. And we'll hopefully see you in the UK soon.